How's it going? This is my first time using Zoom to try to record this, so bear with me. I'm gonna try to screen share right now. Let's see. Okay. Here we are. Okay, so basically, I'm writing a book, pamphlet. Don't know if I ever get it done, but no matter what, it's good enough to share right now, and I think that's what I want to do. But it's called 9 Principles to Restore the Constitution in its Original Intention. I also kind of have another name for it called 9 Principles to Take to War to Restore the Constitution in its Original Intention. The subtitle is Reviving the 1776 Spirit of the American Revolution. What I am doing, I am presenting that the original intent and spirit of the Constitution is found in the Declaration of Independence under 8 of these principles listed below. I advocate that every word that they pursued in the Constitution Convention and the Constitution itself was in pursuance of these principles. That to understand the principles in the Constitution and how to apply them, it doesn't necessarily take a search for every detailed argument of the founders, although superior and the best source, but an understanding of these principles, which is as a corollary throughout life, takes an ongoing cross-examination of intellect and the morality of the heart. A combination of passion and intellect derived from the past history of life's personally influential thoughts and actions, words, and experiences, aka the heart. I kind of just added that in there. But I'm going to keep reading. I believe these principles will help us to restore the Constitution, in other words. Principle number 1, the laws of nature and nature's God. Principle number 2, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Principle number 3, all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Principle number 4, life, liberty, in the pursuit of happiness. Principle number 5, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Principle number 6, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Principle number 7, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government. When a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. Principle number 8, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Principle number 9, a light upon a hill. All right, in this book, I have an appendix. In the appendix, there's like about 14 sections, maybe a few more. But those things we get to. I'm going to jump straight to principle number 1, the laws of nature and nature's God, and try to explain this. So I'm just going to kind of read from it, and then kind of go off the top of my head and explain it a little bit more. So this principle can be written as laws of nature or nature's God, as the principles and things involved with it are 1 complementary and 2 attributes of God, as in Jesus Christ and God the Father, or one's higher power. Now, at this point in time, I think it takes Jesus Christ, God, Jesus Christ specifically, to help restore this country, because this country is just man worshiping themselves and going with whatever they want to go with at this point in time, self-worshiping type of wrongs and rights, and willing to put up with their own wrongs that they're doing and not necessarily care. So to bring God into the picture, And then once one does care, it's hard to keep himself motivated. Um, so once you bring God into the picture, it helps him to continue to stay motivated on that path to try to do something. Let's see. But moving on right next to the next point, natural law in this principle, anyways. Natural law is the law of right reasoning. Just as John Locke, I believe everything can be explained with reasoning, whether it is reasonable that it is the wrong thing or reasonable that it is the right thing. Okay, reasoning. Basically, everything comes down to reasoning. Interesting. But I don't understand how everything doesn't come down to reasoning. Jesus Christ, for instance, was a man of perfection. And what would he need to be perfect? About right reasoning. He needed to have the right reasoning for everything that he did to be perfect. Natural law is right reasoning. In the Constitution, it's labeled as the laws of nature. I mean, in the Declaration of Independence, it's labeled as the laws of nature, and nature's God. But natural law is the underlying governing principle, as well as an attribute itself of the laws of nature. It is the principle which makes God God. Now, that is the underlying principle. Natural law is stated as laws of nature, nature's God. But laws of nature and nature's God could mean more things as well. The underlying principle to those things is natural law, for their existence and for their functioning and organization. Natural law in its verb state is if ever at any time with the knowledge that you have is present, whether from a book, movie, someone else, or other medium of communication, you make it. You make that choice. Now, natural law can be just things that are happening, right? It doesn't have to just be a choice, but in a choice, in a choosing way, in one's belief, natural law, when you say something, that's natural law, that thing is natural law, that means that's the truth. That's the absolute truth. And absolute truth is basically the same thing, means the same thing as right reasoning. To a certain degree, absolute truth is part of right reasoning. So if I say the beginning of man starts at DNA, starts at the mixing of man's sperm and woman's egg together to create a new DNA, as the very beginning process of a human, a new separate human, one with that grows and progresses. It creates its own identity. I think it's basically right reasoning at that point. You know, that's right reasoning. But we'll see if I get more revelation to speak on this as time goes by. Meantime, let's just keep talking in the moment. For the moment, there are two separate categories that one can classify all laws of nature under. There's human laws of nature. These laws of nature are what allows man to exist and continue to exist. They deal with the different accumulation of functions of system that combine for man to be a living animated person. Hair, skin, level, and below, whether in sorrow or joy. Systems such as the skeletal, musculatory, respiratory, blood vessels, arteries, joints, nervous, neurological systems are all part of the human laws of nature side of laws of nature, the human side. Then you have the non-human side of the laws of nature. These laws of nature are what allows anything external of the accumulation and functions that create man in his existence to exist, anything external of man. They deal with the accumulation and functions of systems that combine for the creation of any animal, plant, or natural resource in their raw or commodity form to exist. And raw meaning left basically from nature, how it is. And commodity means kind of man's labor mixed with it to create some type of material good. Like now, a chair, a TV. All those things were once just raw resources on the earth: oil, plastic, metal, copper, rock, wood. But so there's two laws, two sides there. Law carries with it two elements of force. Oh wait, okay, yes. How natural law and federal, state, and local law works. What is law in the applicable manner of federal, state, and local government but the attempted or effective protection of individual/unalienable rights for the citizens in a given boundary or land? We will get to what that means kind of sort of more here in a little bit. Law, let's continue to move on. So in the meantime, law carries with it two elements of force. We have physical force unto death if needed. Every law carries with it the power to kill. Failure to stop for crossing the road, not at a stop walk, has the power to kill if it goes too far. Or if a police officer's judgment is mistaken. The second force is threat/mental force unto hopeful adherence, hoping that you adhere to that threat. This is the acknowledged option of either obeying the law to keep the freedoms which you are aware of and accustomed to, because you can only obey so much that you, based off of what you believe and what you know, or potentially losing them, those things that you value, you're accustomed to, or you're aware of, if possibly engaged in and caught in the act of disobedience to the law. So basically, you're threatened to lose those things that you value, that you're accustomed to, walking around, things that nobody's ever necessarily told you are not against the law, kind of, sort of, for most people. It's a threat of mental force unto hopeful adherence, a threat of losing those other things that you value. The threat is losing your freedom and going to jail, basically, or losing your money, paying for those things at court in the form of fines or restitution. Community service as well. Every law that is created is a power which forces individuals to conform to an action. So I'm going to stop right here and tell you that natural law, is applicable in all of these things and how it comes to this thing. Because law is good, natural law is applicable. And these two elements of force can be good and can be bad if depending on if the law is consistent with right reasoning or not. Now, so law, whether it's right or wrong law, carries with two elements of force: force unto death and mental force unto threat. But we want to make sure it's off of natural law and right reasoning that these laws exist. Every law that is created is a power which forces individuals to conform to an action. A law is one less area that an individual has to determine on his own what he wants to freely choose to do. It is a personal area of life which he once had or was to have that has been delegated to the public through majority vote or birth inheritance to make or supposed to have made the best decisions. And now he used to have these rights, but now the government has them, and they're supposed to make the best decisions on behalf of those rights that you had that you delegated to them. Now you no longer have them because you delegated them to a society for them to make a decision on through the representations of your guys' representatives that you've chosen through the booths of your elections, people you elected to protect it. But the police and police agencies of governments are the ones that attempt to acquire society's obedience to that law. That's what police agencies are for. They're supposed to protect and basically acquire society's obedience to that law. If they do not follow it willfully, then forcefully. What is the governing principles in making law? And I didn't want to necessarily put all this stuff in here about the force of law and how law is applicable in federal, state, and government, but I didn't find anywhere better to put it in a really organized manner. So I just kind of put it here, hoping that it'll just continue to flow. And then I'm trying to make this book as short as possible as well. and explanations of things as short as possible as well. It's not necessarily written as a novel, it's more written as a thing of facts. And I understand that facts sometimes can be hard to continue to remember, but in this case and scenario, there's nothing that's too much easier out there that I've learned to get all of this bang for buck type of information as simple and in simple form as like in free and flowing as it is here that I've come up with. But what is, moving on again, what is the governing principles in making law? Although laws and taxes can be used for a good thing, and bear with me guys as I go through this as well, laws and taxes are the power for individuals / society to force and demand the specific use of how other individuals in that society are to use their personal God-given personal gifts, talents, skills, money, and time. So laws carry with it the power to force, demand, and demand the specific use of your arms, your legs, your hands, the way you use your body, your fingers, because using your fingers on a good job with a typing board is different from using your fingers with tools to fix a car, right? But all those people with two different occupations that I just pointed out have to pay a certain amount of what they work into taxes. So in that case, a certain amount of percentage of how much they work that week or that month for that paycheck is you're being forced, and it's a demand on you to pay for the things in government through that way. It's actually demand. They own that for a certain amount of time. So taxes can be good, but if the law's not good, then you're being pretty much forced. It's not a willful thing, because if it's a good law, everybody and anybody would want to willfully pay that tax, right? So it's not necessarily forced, it's a willful thing. But when law becomes corrupt, you then become forced to pay that. And so those things, those gifts, skills, and talents, your godly gifts, skills, and talents becomes kind of a property of the devil, Satan. And so, yeah, it could be a bad thing as well. Now, contrary to majority of experiences with the average citizen, the law is not something you unquestioningly approve of as the right thing to do. Although that's the most popular judgment out there, is kind of just obey it, right? Because it is a law. That's basically the reason behind it. To me, that is not reason enough, because it is a law. It's all, like I say, we just went through it how many times? We just said it 2 or 3 times. Law can be good or bad. Your obedience to it, just because it is a law, is not necessarily a smart intellectual thing to do for human. Human is based off of a progression, and you can only progress off of right reasoning, and you can only be happy off of that, of natural law and right reasoning as well, right? You continue to make a bad law, something that's not good, you can't necessarily be happy, can't flourish, can't progress. It's captivity. Law is something you question the motives of, the reason behind why it became a law, the effects it has on another, specifically the individuals and groups it affects. It's good to question those things, why those things became a law. It's not just something that you go over your head and go, oh, well, there's another law somebody made up and bug lucked the guy. No, you got to do as much as you can as a citizen to question that, figure out why it became a law, and the kind of effects it has on others. When an act is proposed to be a law, it is best to start off by criticizing all the bad that you can possibly imagine in the life of the individuals it affects, and distinction of who's getting something out of it from becoming a law. Here are some other questions to ask and thoughts to take into account. Since every law carries with it the ability to kill, we should ask ourselves if we really want this act to be something that someone can get killed over. Do we really want this thing to be some walking across the street when there's no car, somebody feels like they can make it across the street? Should we really have that be a law that we can kill them? Or should we say, go ahead and make your best judgment? Yes, society's not going to take the blame for it. You're going to have to take the blame. And if you get hit by a car, it's up to you to pay for it out of your own insurance. Somewhere along those lines, right? We should allow men them as much freedom as they possibly can have. But yeah, you have to pay for the other person's car as well that you chose to run in front of and you got hit. Somewhere along those lines. But let's continue to move on, because let's see. 2, with the reputation government has in society for being corrupt, I find it being one of the best ways to examine in every detail, as circumstances allows, perspective of what bad is to come about to the person that this law affects, as well as myself if it was me, or with the knowledge that I have to examine it with. For instance, let's see. Okay, I want for U.S. government to make sure they hire gay people. The person's job who owns the job can't turn them down. Really? That sounds good for the gay person, right? Well, let's look at it again. That guy who owns the job, he worked his life for that job, or his parents that he got it handed down, so it's in his bloodline. It's his inherited hard work, labor. It's his. That guy, in order for him to continue to run his business, it's his own property. It's just kind of just like his own house. He should be able to say who comes in and who doesn't get to come in, right? How much he wants to pay his child for chores, or how much he doesn't. It's just like a job. It's his own property. It's just on another piece of land where more people get to come in and out of the house that he wants. He should be able to choose who he wants to come inside of in and out of that house, right? And especially who lives there or who works there in his house. Same thing with a job. Once that person makes a job, I mean, once I have a house, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's entitled to it. You cannot just come in my house just because you want to. It's still my house, right? It's my property. I worked hard for this. I pay for this. This is mine. Certain rules here that we live by. And certain reasons, and certain customs, certain comforts that brings with it. And to force somebody to hire somebody gay, it's just like saying that any person who, just because they're gay, now just walk in my front door whenever they want, type of thing, and force me to pay them how much they want me to in chores, for the chores that I have for them to do, or that I normally have my kids to do, that they want to just come in and take over. So it can be a bad thing, be a good thing, but it's good to examine it from a bad point of view. It kind of works out that way for some reason. How much for the implementation of the law, such as police equipment, training, new organizations and committees, will it cost in taxes? So another question. And we just talked about what taxes mean. Force. It could mean force, right? And demand. Entitlement. If the law is for a specific group of people, is there a way for them to get together on their own instead of using the whole of the public to pay for it? We should examine that. If this group of people can get together on their own, pitch in their money, and go over to the healthcare center, and they just want to put in a kitty for themselves, and they can do that without forcing people who don't want it, we should kind of think about doing that, going about it that route. Because remember, that law, if somebody chooses not to pay for it or something like that, can kill somebody. So do you really want to take somebody's life? When it comes down to it, that's life, right? It's somebody's death. You're killing. You have the power to approve of somebody's death, to die, to get killed. That makes sense. Does it ring a bell? Because it sure rings a bell in my head when I think about it like that. Some people, it might just go right over their head and not even care. Now, I just don't think that's right at all. So we should honestly take into account we can do these things on our own without having the approval of somebody's death, then we should do that, right? Law should only be used really for the life and death situations. That's basically it. Everything else should be just left to the people, the citizens, the people in the government to just choose to function, figure out how they want to determine, go about things in their own life with their own choices. And we should protect that thing there, those things there. Nothing more. Okay, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to stop the screen sharing. I'll open back up, see if this will work. I don't know how to get back out of this. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to stop this right now. That was the end of principle number 1. I'm going to end the meeting or stop the recording. Thanks for paying attention. Remember, this is my first one. I'm trying to explain this with this website. Thank you.